Today I'm going to be comparing two versions of the piece called Danse Macabre by Charles Camille. A brief history about this piece is that it's actually a Halloween anthem, and it was started out in 1872, but as a poem written by Henry Casales. And then in 1874, Charles actually composed the tune and then just replaced the singing voice with a solo violin. A story behind this song is that, according to Christian legend, death appears every midnight on Halloween and then call for the dead, like the corpse and skeletons upon the grave, to dance while death play the song, which is represented by the solo violin in this piece. And then everyone dance until the rooster crows at sundown, and then they go back to their grave and wait for next year Halloween. The structure of this piece is that it is played in key G minor and open with a harp playing a single note 12 times, which represents a 12 strokes of midnight, and then a solo violin enters and play a tritone consisting of A and E flat, which is actually the violin E string has been tuned down to E flat to create a dissonant tone that actually suits with the story behind this piece. There is also a part that is called a dies irae, which is presented in a major key, unusually like different from the first and the second theme. And also at the very end, there is a coda, which the coda represents the morning where the rooster crows and the dead go back to their graves. I will use these two arrangements. One is a percussion arrangement played by Polish Nationwide Music School, and another one is a symphony from Netherlands Symphony Orchestra. When changing this into a percussion arrangement, we can actually see the difference in the dynamic when comparing this to the original that is played by a solo violin. And in the beginning, the single note that have been played 12 times, when using percussion, it actually helps with the clock symbolizations. So this actually makes the 12 strikes sounds more like a clock. For this arrangement, it stays more true to the original, and the dynamic of the solo violin is very strong, and the dissonance is very noticeable, and the pitch of the violin is also very clear. It's louder than any other instrument that has been played in the background. So comparing the two versions together on this part, I will say that the timbre is very different because it uses different instrument, so it gives out different emotions. So before the recapitulation part, we can hear that there's a part of a motive played in a scale back and forth, and then every instrument bursts out together at the exact same times. And the pitch of every instrument in this arrangement is at the exact same volume, so there is no part that is like more noticeable than one another. This part can actually represent the power of the death, and because it's actually a recapitulation and also it is very near the ending that it's the morning, we can view this part as it is representing the climax of the story where the death is dancing together like one last time. Arrangement has more articulations in terms of loudness, so the motive of a scale that is going back and forth, the loudness of that motive is also being adjusted back and forth as well. And there's also a moment before the very powerful part that every instrument will be played softer. So the dynamic before everything shifts to a very strong one represents a story. I also feel like this arrangement sounds more like a story because they give a shine to the solo violins, and I feel like the solo violin in this arrangement act like a narrator that actually tells the audience where the story is going and what will happen next. This arrangement to the percussion one, I feel like this arrangement adds more emotional because they adjust the loudness back and forth actually before the recapitulation, the very strong part. So I feel like this arrangement kind of play with our emotions that nothing is in the same level, and it actually goes back and forth and up and down like a roller coaster rides. So the coda part or the ending is very quiet comparing to the overall sounds of the piece, and it actually goes with the story because it's like the party is over and the dead had to go back to their grave, and we can hear every instrument playing the same motive after one another like imitation, and there's also a little ornament that kind of playing a spooky sounds before everything ends. And the ending actually gives out a very mysterious and unfinished energy because it actually goes well with the story because it's Halloween and the death call up the corpse and the undead out of the grave every Halloween. So it's like they are signalizing that this is not the end and next Halloween we are going to do this again. As I mentioned before that I feel like the Netherlands Symphony actually makes this arrangement sounds more like a story because in the end the melody is very different from the percussion band and it actually ended with a solo part that the violin plays. So again it kind of sounds like the violin acts like a narrator and the voice that come out of the violin actually sounds very sad. For me, it gives out the emotion of the ending that the party is over and everyone have to go back to their grave. And the motif that we can hear in the percussion bands can be heard in here too, but it actually acts more like an ornament rather than the main idea. The dynamic of this motif also is very fast and it kind of plays like in a rush, but also it is very softer and much quieter than the percussion band's ending. It actually refers back to the story. The ending of the Netherlands Symphony actually given out even more of an unfinished and to be continue kind of emotions than the percussion band one because it plays in a rush and also a very short and soft tune. So it actually fits into the story. So in conclusion, I prefer the Netherlands Symphony because it sticks more true to the original version and also the details and elements throughout the performance are more oriented. There's a lot of dynamic shifting and also a volume, a pitch being adjusted back and forth. As an audience, I feel like there's a lot of adventurous emotions when I'm listening to this arrangement. Also, the violin solo actually makes this piece perfect because it acts as a narrator and it makes me feel like I'm listening to a story, but just without a word being spoken.